Welcome, everyone. Since we all got a chance to listen to you, I am going to throw some questions out. Some will be directed at individuals. Most of them are broad, and this is a big one. It's now recognized that psychological therapies like CBT, ACT, as well as some physical therapies, such as graded therapy, are really effective. Yet at the same time, sometimes those therapies should also be avoided. We've heard a bit of both sides. So how do we tell the difference, and how do we make that distinction?
May I jump in? Would that be too bold? This is really an area that I've studied deeply over many decades. And the research shows that cognitive behavior therapy is as helpful for people with ME/CFS, myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, as it is for people with any other chronic health condition like heart disease, ulcers, arthritis, Crohn's disease, etc. It doesn't cure the disease. So I just feel that's so important, because medicine has really gone down a very unfortunate path with our disease, somehow setting it apart and saying CBT, changing your mindset, will change the underlying biology. And the research really shows that isn't true. Mm-hmm. Similarly, graded exercise therapy has been really dismissed. Some of the biggest studies, the PACE trial, has been shown to be inaccurately reported. We'll say that in the nicest possible way. So ME/CFS has a ton of biological findings, and those two therapies do not change the underlying biology. If someone has a lot of negative belief systems, of course, cognitive behavior therapy could be helpful. And if someone is really overly avoidant of activity, graded activity could be very helpful. But some people have made the inaccurate leap that they actually cure the conditions, and there's no evidence to support that.
I'd like to add on to that, sorry, Dr. Ferland, but I'd like to add on to that very quickly from a patient perspective. My friends, if you have ever found yourself saying that every time you get stressed, it hurts more, or you're more tired or fatigued, if you find that you talked about it in terms of being fearful, afraid of what's coming next, we know that those stresses are hard for any system, and they're hard on our system. We have less resources in our body and in our brains to deal with everything. And so really, if you are looking at mental health therapies, whether it's CBT, mindfulness, those kinds of things, what you're going to be looking for is a way to help manage those emotions and buffer yourself from the effects of stress. When it comes to the physical aspects like movement and things like that, motion is important, but that's because everybody needs to be in motion. And we aren't necessarily looking for a cure. We're looking for the best way to manage our pain or our condition, despite having the condition.
I'll happily take a cure, though, I will say.
Dr. Ferland.
Yeah, I think Tracy stole my thunder. But yeah, I was going to say the same thing. One thing is trying to go on the source of the disease, the biologic mechanisms. We're still trying to find a cure for those diseases and see if we can modify the biology, find a molecule that can be fixed. But having said that, I find that my patients, many times their reaction to the disease is worse. Their response to having a disease is not healthy. Their thinking is wrong. They're fearful. They stop moving. They stop living. So I find that cognitive behavior therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, graded activities are excellent to tackle those aspects, the reaction that the person decided to take to the disease that they have. So I think that's helpful.
Excellent. One person asked the question, for a lot of these strategies and even some of the questionnaires that you guys referenced in terms of using it to identify symptoms, we're talking in the context of adults often. What about children? Is there any suggestions for children?
So I'll just again jump in for ME/CFS. There's the pediatric guidelines. I'd have to look it up to give an exact reference. I believe, I can't remember who the first author is, but they're out there. There's some very subtle differences between how ME/CFS, and I don't know if long COVID is the same. I haven't actually looked into it. Presents a little bit differently in children. So children actually tend to get much more pain, many more headaches and stomach aches than adults do. And because, especially if they're pre-pubertal, they don't have life experience, they can't really say, oh, I'm really tired, because they don't have anything to compare it to. So often it's just more behavioral. They're just kind of lying around, not doing as much. They can't really verbally report what's happening. And they often have a lot more orthostatic intolerance, so dizziness. And, you know, the orthostatic intolerance is something you can really support and make a huge difference for people. So it's really important to look for it. You know, if you're a physician or healthcare professional listening, please measure, you know, delayed standing blood pressure and really see if that person has orthostatic intolerance, because that's something for which there's a ton of evidence and you can really make a person's life a lot better.
I encourage, when we're dealing with pediatric pain of any kind, I encourage the parents to reach out for peer support. Sometimes children, they get some value of meeting other kids with the condition, but I find that the parents need support because we never know what we're doing. It's hard enough to be a parent. Being a parent of some poor child that has something that you want to fix so badly, but you don't really understand, and that feeling of helplessness, you deserve to have that kind of help, and peer support is for you as well.
Thank you. All right, this one's a great question, and I'm gonna throw it to our individuals with lived experience first. So from a patient point of view, person with lived experience, what is one thing you would want healthcare providers to know in working with people with chronic pain?
That's tough. I mean, I think for me, it's not just the pain aspect. It's all of the symptoms that I had listed off before. I think with COVID, it's just the fact that it's so new. We also seem to, society, or we seem to have like just brushed it off all of a sudden as well. For about 2 years, we really talked about COVID nonstop. And now apparently the pandemic is over. But I think even having recontracted COVID over Easter time, I went into emerge because of the way my lungs are and how susceptible I was to it. And there was a little bit of dismissiveness, both by the triage nurse and by the emergency physician. And so I joked with my friends and family, and I said, you know, it wasn't until I used my big nursing words that they took me seriously. And I had to explain what happened the first time with COVID and such. And so I guess for healthcare practitioners, is just always remember that you know, when patients are coming to seek you, it's because they're really concerned about their situation at that time. And having been a nurse, you know, I realize sometimes we see it all the time, and so it's really easy to be a little bit dismissive because it's like, oh, this is just another day. However, for the patient themselves, and this experience has really enlightened me in that aspect of it, is taking that extra time and making sure that that you're listening to them, and that you're, if not actually taking it as seriously as them, at least presenting that you're taking it seriously and not being dismissive.
I think what I would like for them to know is that it doesn't matter where I am in this journey. I am doing the best I can. Some patients who come in are riddled with fear and communicating in a rough manner because they don't know what to say or how to describe what they're going through. And I've heard doctors and professionals say, well, they're not really trying. Well, it took me a long time to figure out what trying actually meant. I mean, it's not like we were given the skills to deal with this before we got sick. It's a learning curve while you're feeling miserable and extremely fatigued. And I encourage doctors to be supportive of that and be a platform and a partner in learning. And you'll find, I believe, that more patients will succeed with that kind of partnership.
And it's interesting because I always think as a clinician, my favorite days are the days when a patient comes in and says, guess what I did? That is the best experience you can have, and always hope for those experiences. So I will turn it over to our clinician side of things. As a clinician, what is something that you would want healthcare providers to know about dealing with individuals living with these conditions?
So yeah, I can start. I like my colleagues to take the patients seriously. I teach a lot in the workers' compensation and insurance areas. And there's always someone that says, well, but this thing about chronic pain, you're telling me that chronic pain is a disease on itself. This is just a thing of the pain specialist. This is not really true because everything actually heals. Work-related injuries, they heal. And if the person has continue having pain for a long time, is because they want the compensation, they want to get out of work, and that drives me mad. But I have to convince them that you need to go back to study a little bit more and find out, go back and read some articles about the changes that happen and why chronic pain is a disease on itself, because we can see changes in the body. There are many, in almost every system that is investigated, there are changes. So they're not inventing, they're not making this up. So please believe them and help them, because the fact that you are not believing them, now they have to exaggerate in front of you to prove that they are in pain. And why do you want them to do this? And I know some people will come to me, they will say, Dr. Furlan, I didn't take my painkiller this morning because I wanted you to see me in pain. Poor thing. I tell them, you don't need to do this. I believe that you are in pain, but other physicians don't. So they really need to come without taking their painkillers and coming on withdrawal just to demonstrate that they really have pain anyways. So that's frustrating.
Thank you.
Yeah, in addition, I mean, those are great points that everyone else has made. One maybe slightly on a different note is that I recently wrote a paper on suicide because so many people with these complex chronic conditions commit suicide. I've lost many patients from my practice over the years because they're falling between the cracks. They don't have the support, the belief, the validation. And what we kind of came up with in the paper, looking at the literature, is that practical things can make a big difference. So the patient might need you to fill out forms for disability. Mm-hmm. They might need you to fill out forms for an electric wheelchair. You might be like, really, do you need that? But you know what? If no patient is going to ask for a wheelchair that they don't need. I've never had that, I've never experienced that. They may need you to fill out forms for like authorization to get special drugs, or for AISH, or whatever province you live in, the disability. So these things can make the difference between life and death. If someone has pain, but they know that their physician is on their side, and when they go and ask for something, it will at least receive a fair hearing.
Yeah.
And that they have some dignity because they have a shelter and food and transportation, like handy bus, disabled parking, like all of those practical things can really be life or death.
I think it's really valuable. There's been a theme around believing when patients come into a room and believing them. And I think the other thing I'm hearing in all of you is it's also about believing in them. So for clinicians, it also is believing that there is things we can try, suggestions, opportunities, accessibility, a focus on function, and that might mean a little extra work or work that isn't the typical work day for clinicians, and that's not asking too much. For a really pragmatic question, someone wanted a little more discussion around brain retraining and what that means. So I know that might mean a little something different for everyone, but just thoughts on brain retraining. What's a really great way to start doing that?
I'll start. And I'm going to start from a patient perspective, brain retraining. I want to go back to Dr. Stein talking about breaking down how you feel and what you can do and making a plan. That is brain retraining. It's a habit forming retraining. But in doing so, as you begin to accomplish and you begin to move forward, that has a benefit in our lives. Changing our attitude about pain, instead of it being a focus solely on pain-free, but focusing more on living the best life we can despite our pain, is a beginning step in brain retraining. And then I am a firm believer that if you find a program and you give it a shot, and it's focused on brain retraining, or it's focused on mindfulness or CBT or DBT or exercise therapy, if you find that it is beneficial to you, then it is beneficial to you. When we take these supportive therapies or supportive practices, it's just like medicine. It is never the same for any two people. We create our own experience as we attempt to help ourselves. So I'm going to encourage people, if it's something that they're interested in, to pursue it, look into it, find out whether or not it's something that's worthwhile for you.
I'll just piggyback on what Tracy said. You know, from my experience, having gotten into doing leatherworking and having that hobby really helped, because with the effects that COVID has left me, a lot of my previous hobbies just aren't feasible. And if I do try them, I'm going to crash myself out for days on end afterwards. And you can only spend so much time sitting in front of a computer, as I learned in my first year of being home with COVID. So yeah, it's just finding those things that can take your mind off of your current situation and just immerse yourself into something that you enjoy.
Perfect.
And I like to go last because everything I was going to say is already said. But for me, brain retraining is everything that has been said here. Actually, I put in my 8 steps to conquer chronic pain. The first step is brain retraining, because I think we have an amazing ability in our brain to control all the organs, all the systems of the body. And if we learn how to do this, like with a hobby, like Adam was saying, doing a hobby, learning a new hobby, you are creating new neuroplastic synapses in your brain, and those will take over, distract your brain, will take attention, remove the attention from your symptoms, shift to something that is, an activity related. That is treatment for pain. When a person decides to go for a walk, they're doing brain retraining. Because going for a walk, doing some breathing exercises, vagus nerve exercise, every kind of exercise, you are creating synapses in the brain. And those are healthy synapses that your brain needs. So then it can move away from the other unhealthy synapses. So there are a number of different brain retraining, thinking differently, creating new synapses, undoing synapses that are unlearning the things that your disease created in your brain. So it's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, I totally agree with what everybody said. And the one thing, Dr. Furlan kind of set us up for this by giving this beautiful metaphor of the danger alarm. And my view of brain training is to teach the brain it doesn't need to be on alarm mode all the time. It's basically that simple. And you do that by consciously telling it that, by practicing calming the body, because the body and the brain are so connected, and then by making new habits.
I think it's so important because one of the things you've all mentioned, whether it's through tracking, whether it's through enjoyment, it's about being present so that when you actually have a change, you notice it. And that's that mindfulness piece that often gets really convoluted and people think they have to have crystals and yurts, but it's really quite simple. It means being present and paying attention on purpose, and a big part of it being without judgment, so that you're not judging that in that process. I'm going to ask each one of you one last question, and it's kind of shifting a little. So you are all so passionate about pain management and even peer support and helping a greater community. How do you care for yourself when there are so many people that need your help and support? Adam, I'm going to call on you first.
All right. That's a tough question. I think over the last 2.5 years, it's been a really big learning process to focus on myself. Before getting sick, of course, you know, a very busy nurse in management and education, with a young family and kids, and you know, I put those two priorities first and foremost on everything. I always thought of myself last, and such. And so this experience has really shown me that, well, it's given me no choice but to think of myself first, because as most clinicians know, you know, you can't take care of anybody else if you're not taking care of yourself too. And or I can't help anybody if I don't have the energy to help myself. And so I've really had to learn to embrace that, and you know, I've had to learn how to say no to different things. I've had to learn how to say no to myself, that, hey, you know, you can't do that today, maybe tomorrow, and such. And so, and just learning to listen to the signs and symptoms of a possible crash or an exacerbation, and such. And so I guess that is what I've been doing. Unfortunately, it's still a very steep learning curve, and sometimes I think my wheels are going backwards. But definitely trying, and just trying to be present, and be patient with myself.
So I want to say this, and everybody who's watching is going to fully understand. I know the importance of doing that. I know the value in doing it. I know how much it improves my life when I look after me and make sure I'm taking care of first, pace myself, things like that. And I will be the first to admit that I am terrible at it. It is the easiest part of self-management to completely and utterly mess up. And in the beginning, it was probably one of the hardest things I had to learn. So what I've had to implement in order to do the work that I do with Help Alberta and look after myself, is I give myself things like, for example, painting my nails. During that time while I'm doing my nails, I will not be answering the phone. I will be not solving a problem. I will not be figuring out what I'm doing for supper. And if it's not my nails today, maybe it's gardening, or it's painting, or maybe it's reading a book. But I give myself time every day, and some bigger time every week, in which I have assigned myself a personal experience in which the whole world is shut off. And for those of you with small children, I have a cap, a baseball cap, and when I have it on, it means leave me alone. And I can walk through the house without people jumping on me. I know it sounds weird, but it works.
I love it.
I can go next. I don't know if I do this well, has everybody who is super busy, but I tend to take care of my body in terms of nutrition. I pay a lot of attention to what I eat. I think I learned this from my mother. I cook dinner every night. I go grocery shopping once a week, and I only buy the best ingredients. I rarely eat out or order food. So I'm always, every day I cook and my family eats. I also take a lot of, pay attention to my sleep. I sleep every night 8 to 9 hours. I don't exercise a lot. I wish I would exercise more, but I'm trying to do that. And I also pay attention to my mental health. I would say my best counselor is my Bible. I read my Bible and meditate on my Bible every day. And I lead all my worries to my God. And I think that's a big relief for me because I don't need to carry those on my shoulders. I also am very connected with family and friends and a community. I think that social aspect is extremely important. I socialize a lot. As a good Brazilian, you probably know Brazilians, we like to get together, barbecue, and do parties. So I do that a lot. I think that's what keeps me the healthiest that I can be.
Thank you.
I guess for me, it's been a very slow, steep learning curve. In medicine, we're taught the patient always comes first. And I am now unlearning that habit. So by retiring from medical practice, not seeing patients, it gives me much more flexibility. And for those of you who don't know me, I bought a van, which I converted, and I'm currently in Central California. Doing some of the things that I've kind of looked forward to doing for a long time, but put on hold. So I guess making a decision not to put things on hold forever.
I love that. And I think all of you have made a point of saying it is about making decisions. And to take a note from acceptance and commitment therapy, it's about making a choice and a commitment to action. And the reason I think it's so great to finish with that is that all of you have pointed out it has to be a part of the process. It can't just be about waiting for other people and whatnot. There's a role that you have yourself to make decisions and choices about whether it's treatments, what works, what doesn't, and how to take care of yourself. And that is going to be unique and personal to everyone. And the healthcare practitioners are also in need of care, just like their patients are. So thank all of you for being here. And to everyone who has joined us on the live stream, thank you for being with us this afternoon. I think there's a lot of inspiration that came out of today, and I want everyone to realize you can also be an inspiration when you look back at everything that you have gone through and how you have persevered. We all have inspirational stories to tell, and storytelling is a great way to spread that message of hope. So on behalf of the Pain Society of Alberta, thank you for being here with us for Let's Talk About, and we will see you again in the fall.